this is going to be a free appearance for me and for you.
Well, hardest working man in showbiz, Kilmeade. You always are.
Well, listen, do you have a Ruthless podcast today?
We had one out this morning. Yeah, we talked a lot about tariffs. We had Doug Burgum on the program, Secretary of Interior, explained, I think, a sort of an important context to all of that with American energy independence and how that plays into what we're doing around the world.
So now we're under, we're about 60. We're about $60 a barrel. We're looking at right now, which I know the oil business doesn't love, but the American people do.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think all of this, barrels of oil, everything else, is all supply demand at some level. And the point is to try to get the economy back in a healthier place. I mean, for the last 3 or 4 years, we've had an economy that has basically been an artificial marketplace that has been bolstered by federal government spending to the point where it's completely and totally unsustainable, unfair trade deals around the world that nobody else wants to revisit. And I think that's what the Trump administration is trying to do. Our great equalizer is when we have stuff that nobody else can do. Energy is sort of foremost amongst them. And I was pleased to hear Secretary Burgum talk a lot about that on our program today.
Right. So here is what Kevin Hassett just said that had the market happy. It looks like he's ready. It looks like the president's looking ready to do deals. Let's listen.
I think that right now we're managing a massive number of requests for negotiations. It's actually logistically quite challenging just to go through them. It's something that I've been spending a lot of the time this morning doing because at NSC and NEC, what we have to do is prioritize the meetings for the president. And there are so many to go through that, we're actually getting ready to present a plan for him on, who and when. But he obviously prioritizes two of our closest allies and trading partners, Japan and Korea. And the word out of those conversations was really out of the positive, and positive really for American workers, American farmers. There are a heck of a lot of concessions on the table. In the end, the president, of course, is going to be the one who decides whether the deal is good enough to change his mind about the tariffs.
Josh, I guess the president say he had a great conversation with the acting president of South Korea. They're looking to move forward. So do you think with every deal from Israel to Cambodia to Vietnam to the EU, you'll see the market respond positively? Could we get back to where we were?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is really encouraging, and Hassett does a great job of laying that all out. I think both from the market standpoint and just from an individual sort of pocketbook standpoint, what you hoped that the president would want to accomplish here is exactly what Hassett just outlined, is bring everybody back to the table. Let's see if we can get a better deal for the American worker and the American taxpayer. That in and of itself, if tariffs are a mean to that end, I think it's universally positive for the market, for all of us. The problem, I think, is in the first few days of rolling this out, there's a bit of a bifurcated message coming out of Peter Navarro and others that essentially said, like, tariffs are good. We love tariffs, and they should be here forever, and we'll make a lot of money off of them. That's a different message than tariffs are a tool that we use to get a better deal for America. That second message, that it's a tool, is something that's going to inspire a lot of confidence out of the American people, and something that's frankly long overdue.
What do you think it is, Josh? Do you think it's a tool, or do you think it's a form of revenue? What do you think a week from now, what are we going to conclude?
Well, I think there's definitely two camps within the Trump administration that see it differently. But if you know anything about Donald Trump, he loves a deal. He loves to make a deal. He talked last fall to the Business Roundtable where he told a story about the president of France and a tariff back and forth that they had that ultimately he threatened tariffs. And so our tariffs that were charged to American companies were dropped and they all moved forward. I think illustrating that and saying during the campaign what he would do to use it as a tool is sort of something that everybody else has bought into. I know that Navarro camp resides within this administration, but if you're already hearing Hassett talk about 50 plus countries coming to the table and them beginning to work out the contours of a deal, I mean, we're not even a week old on this, Brian. It feels pretty encouraging.
So right now I'm seeing the top of Mediaite that it looks like Elon Musk is going at it with Peter Navarro, calling the box of rocks a moron, because Peter Navarro says he's not a car maker, he's a car assembler, meaning Elon Musk, because he gets his batteries, according to Peter Navarro, from Japan, and he gets certain elements of the car from other places. So what do you think Trump's thinking when that happens?
Well, they don't call it the most transparent administration in history for nothing, Brian. They'll wield insults over X and throughout the public discourse. I honestly think there's some health to it within the confines of an administration. I'm not in love with the fact that it spills outside the locker room all the time if I'm in that administration, but it does show a different approach to a whole bunch of different problems, and the president is ultimately getting advice from different areas and different spectrums on the ideological spectrum, and I think that part is healthy. But I tend to sort of augur more towards Elon's view of a lot of this, although the electric car part, I think Navarro's got a point. I mean, that's been my critique of electric vehicle mandates all along, that they just can't be assembled in the United States. It's just a simple fact, at least not now. And so, look, this is all sort of positive. You see market reaction. I think we got a long way to go here, though, Brian. I don't think this is something that is like now solved and like for the rest of the week and in perpetuity. I think there's a huge tax component to that, which we're looking at on Capitol Hill right now as the House Republicans are trying to grapple with that. I think that is equally important to the trade and tariff discussion that we're having in terms of the long-term health of the American economy. And that's ultimately what this administration is going to be judged upon.
So we have Apple users rushing to upgrade their phones. Apple's also ramping up their iPhone shipment from India to the U.S. as it scrambles to avoid steep tariffs. We also know they're trying to scramble to get out of China to over to India, but India's got to come to the table soon. And the EU saying zero tariffs. The president said not good enough because you still don't take our beef, you don't take our cars. So I'm not sure how long they're going to keep staring each other down. So we'll see what happens there. But when they do an EU deal, the only thing that will be bigger than that would be China. So do you think the president's that upset that China's digging in? I think on some level the president wants this economic fight.
Yeah, no, I think he does want this fight. And, the great fear with China is that they'd take their economy right down to the studs rather than admit that they had to have a discussion with the United States about the unfair deal that we're getting. So I do think that's a real consideration. When you look at the EU, they're absolutely right. It's not just a tariff issue. It's about the openness of a marketplace. I mean, the next time you see a Ford driving around the streets of Paris, let me know, because they're just not there. They don't accept American vehicles, and there's a whole bunch of those pieces that fall underneath. That, as Hassett said in that clip you played, I mean, it's complicated. I mean, we're talking about individual pieces within a larger export-import matrix that you're going to have to go through.
It's going to be fascinating to see. And then out of nowhere, the president announced Saturday we're having talks. He says direct, Iran says indirect talks on getting rid of their nuclear program. The last one was just an embarrassment. They had a 10-year sunset on it. They couldn't do visual inspections. They weren't allowed to go to certain areas. And even the Democrats like Chuck Schumer in the Senate and Cardin, they didn't sign off on it. Do you sense that Iran might be legitimately trying to do a Libya and saying, take my weapons, please?
Look, if there's one thing I'm absolutely certain of, is that when you have a democratically held government, Democrats control the president, the White House, and the House, they're going to get taxes wrong, they're going to get spending wrong, they're going to get border policy wrong, and they're going to get Iran wrong. And I think the message that Iran has had from the United States is, well, I don't know. You wait around long enough and see if the political winds change, and you can get a pallet full of cash from the next crew, right? So I think they intend to continue doing what they're doing right up until the point where you have an administration that ensures that they don't. Now, the Trump administration, the first time around, took an incredible bunch of actions that basically just reduced their ability to export their own resources, oil, gas, and others. They limited their bank account. They put huge amounts of sort of import-export controls on Iran, and it limited their ability basically to do and fund Hamas and Hezbollah and all the other problems that we've seen in the Middle East. That was effective. I trust the president's team when it comes to Iran. They got it right the first time. I think they're going to get it right again.
So I don't know if you've noticed or if they've pitched you, there's a few books coming out about Joe Biden's administration. Turns out no one thinks he was all there. And they're all pointing out different things about the election, dropping out, should he or shouldn't he? The worst scenario happened. You have Joe Biden's team saying, how dare Nancy Pelosi do this? Most people say, how dare she not do this earlier? Why didn't Barack Obama come out? Who was behind George Clooney? You literally have a situation where everyone hates everyone. And nobody ever told the truth when it mattered. And that's when he was in power. Josh, how did they keep this secret? You would say it on your show. People would brush you back on our show. And how dare you treat older people like that? And he's fine. Look at the legislation that'll pass. Now we find out he worked an hour a day and Otto Penn signed most of the legislation. And nobody thought he was all there, from Obama to Clooney to Pelosi. And who knows what Kamala Harris really saw and thought.
Yeah, I mean, look, it ain't a bingo parlor or a place for mom. It's the White House, and it's the leader of the free world. And so I think, everybody had the right to be critical of the Biden administration. I think what it is more than anything, though, Brian, is a commentary on the modern Democratic Party, which stands for basically nothing other than trying to hold power. And they thought their best shot was to run a cadaver in 2024. And they thought just the power of incumbency alone, set up against a former president that they were convinced through, legal action and everything else would become unpopular enough where it didn't matter, basically, who is running the White House. And all of those conversations where everybody hates everybody is whether or not basically it is a fortuitous situation for the Democratic Party or not to move on from Joe Biden. It's not about whether Joe Biden can do the job. It's not about whether or not you have ideas that can improve the lives of the American people. It's everything about whether we can hold the White House. And I think that in and of itself demonstrates the bankruptcy, both moral and intellectual bankruptcy of today's Democratic Party that has gotten them into this mess in the first place. If you stand for absolutely nothing, American people are going to see that.
Am I the only one not impressed and figure it's just nonsensical what Cory Booker did? I mean, I don't know what he was standing up for. It wasn't Obamacare. It wasn't, tariffs. What was he doing? I don't get it.
Yeah, this is the Senate filibuster. It's the oldest and dumbest routine that you can do in the United States Senate, which is basically like prove that you can stand there for 24 hours. What made Cory Booker's stunt so dumb is that I don't know what the hell it was for.
Yes.
Like no one can articulate what it is that he was standing up there to do. Like when Ted Cruz did it 14 years ago, it was about Obamacare. It was about our unwillingness to go forward with that as a Republican Party. This had no message whatsoever other than he could do it.
Yeah.
And you see his colleagues walking around being like, oh my gosh, what courage. What a demonstration project. It's like, of what? Of what? Like, yeah. I mean, I guess it takes a lot to stand there for 24 hours and not pee your pants. And he did that very successfully.
So Bill Maher had a point on this past show. I can't wait to see his review of his meeting with President Trump when he went to the White House with Kid Rock. But he had a point this weekend. He said, the one thing that Trump showed everybody is you got to be authentic. Whatever it is, Trump's Trump. That's where he is, on or off camera, on the golf course or in the boardroom. Got it. So when I see Cory Booker and I see Gavin Newsom, I see actor. They're acting.
Totally.
There's nothing real there. I see Governor Shapiro. I think he seems pretty authentic. Senator Fetterman, authentic. I don't care what I look at AOC as authentic. But do you think the American people have really raised their standard? They want to see the real you?
100%. And you can make an argument about how that's changed through social media and access to different silos of information. It's not 3 nets and 3 cables anymore. You've got a whole bunch of different choices. And I think that has brought some authenticity to the process that the American people frankly demand. And it's not just Donald Trump. It's everyone who has to demonstrate a certain relatability. And Democrats, because of what I just talked about, because of they have no real compass here whatsoever, they're making it up as they go along. You look at Gavin Newsom, who's all of a sudden having conservatives on a podcast and pretending like he's understanding what they're saying. I mean, this guy's 4 years removed from throwing people in jail for walking the beach.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely nonsensical. It makes no sense, but people can see right through that. I mean, the American people are really deft at looking at context of election, what your message is, who you are. When Kamala Harris stands up there in her one and only debate and says, I'm a champion of small business, having never spent a day in a small business in her entire life, people laugh at it. They think it's funny. It's a punchline. But yet they still are operating on like a 1995 set of rules about how you communicate to the American people. Right. And it ain't working out great for them.
I don't even think she worked at McDonald's. I want to get to the bottom of that story. I think Trump was 100% right on that.
That was fiction.
Right.